Everyone sees IT as a cost center, but
Let's walk through the cost of everyday outage.
hey, it's Brett Chittum with Lawrence Systems, and I'm here again with
Jason Slago from CWR.
Hey, we're having some fun here. We're doing these videos and trying to really get the business technicalities into play here with all our businesses. One of the things Jason and I were talking about is making technology make sense to a non-technical person. And I know Jason's going to poke fun of me at this, and I'm ready for it. But when I brought this up to Jason to talk about this, I come from a very non-technical background in business. In fact, I come from the insurance industry, and it is widely known that the insurance industry is 200 years behind anybody else in technology. It totally is. And when I was thinking about this, and when I was talking with Jason, it was about when we are trying to sell a technical product to a client. How are we making it make sense? Because I talk with clients all the time. In fact, I just had a conversation 2 days ago with a client where we're going to increase their managed service price because we're adding more to our stack, right? And we're adding all these different things. They need to qualify for CMMC. So there are a lot of things that they need, but it was funny as the guy said to me, "Well, why should I pay $34,000 more a year for what you're offering me?" And I told him flat out, I said, "Well, first off, we haven't been charging you enough. And second off is because you need it for this, you need it for
Yeah.
this. Do you remember the assessment sheet we went over?" And I had to dumb it down to this guy and to really truly understand and make it make sense to him that in your business, it's going to hurt you more if you don't have this protection, if you don't. And that's where insurance and IT come into play so closely, is because it's about protecting the client. And how can you make that make sense to the client, right?
Yep. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. So
You can sneeze all, yeah, please do.
no, I think it went away.
Okay,
So
well,
so that's pretty funny. We should leave that in.
that's
Uh,
staying in.
from a perspective of where I've landed over the years is the clients don't care, right? Like, and they shouldn't, right? Like it's my job to make sure that they don't have to care, right? Like
Hmm.
the individual technical pieces of that we do and we're responsible for, like that they pay me to not have to worry about that stuff,
Right.
right? So the trick is identifying where your client is technically and then trying to meet them at that same spot, right? So like if I'm talking to a more technical user, then I will tend to get a little more technical because it goes both ways, right? If you talk to
Hmm.
a really non-technical user like Brett or most honestly most sales
Yeah.
staff, my sales guys here they're not that technical. If you talk to them, you want to stay really high level, right? And
Hmm.
you want to talk about value and things that they're not going to have to worry about. If you take that same approach with a more technical person, right? Like one of the most recent ones we closed, my sales guys couldn't do it, right? Like I had to come in and have a conversation because if you're talking to a technical person and you're talking to them like if you're ELI fiving, right? If you're
Hmm.
explaining it like they're five, then they think you don't know what you're doing, and you're just basically spewing buzzwords at them. So you need a
Yeah.
more technical person to come in and have a technical conversation, and finding that balance
Yeah.
is really hard.
I do that. So I mean, I would bring Tom into a call. I do a lot of 15-minute discovery calls with clients, and I sometimes I'll bring Tom into that call. Travis, our sales technical engineer here, I'll bring him into a call because they can add more to the discussion, right? And you like
Yeah.
you get a technical person. I've been on the phone with a highly technical person. I feel uncomfortable sometimes. I still make it through the process, but having people like that I can have behind me to do it is just made a whole world of sense. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta say though, so that client that I was talking about in the beginning of this, he actually said, "Well, I guess if I have an issue, $34,000, paying $34,000 extra would be better than having an issue."
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that you obviously your proximity to us and
Mm-hmm.
we have a good amount of manufacturing and a lot of that manufacturing is just in time, right? And it's
Right.
like there are some very big fines if you idle a line,
Hmm.
and at some point or another, getting them to pay the right amount of money. It's like, you're paying me that amount of money so that you don't have an outage,
Right.
right? But it's one of those things that, how do you prove a negative, right? It's like, how can I prove to you that if you hadn't spent the money, you would have had an outage? And you can't, right? So it's one of
Right.
those things that the more effective we are, the harder it is long term for the customer to see the value, because everything's just working great, right? And it's like, well, everything's great, like, why am I paying you so much money, man? Everything is good. And it's like, everything is good
There's
because
a
you're paying me
reason.
so much money.
There's a
Not
reason for
Yeah,
it. I mean, gosh, it doesn't make sense to me. And I was that business owner that thought I could do my own thing. I got my own switch and I got my own firewall and I did it all myself. And then wait a minute, I need to connect my different locations together. How do I do that?
yeah. It's probably interesting, just because of the nature of the business that you guys tend to run, and where those leads come. I would
Mm,
imagine that the average person you end up talking to is probably significantly more advanced than the average business owner as
mhm.
far as technical knowledge goes.
Agreed, but it's when that but I tend to have an issue when it comes I'm talking to that technical person and then they've got to bring in their vice president
Yeah,
or
yeah,
somebody higher than them to
yep,
make the decision. And I never leave it up to the person I'm talking to have that conversation with that person
yeah,
because I don't think they're going to be able to do it like we would be able to do it. So I
yeah,
always say, bring them on. Let's get them on the phone right now. Let's
yeah.
have that conversation.
I mean, that's sales 101, right? You
Right.
really need to be talking to the decision maker, or
Hmm.
you're largely wasting your time. It's you want that technical person to be a champion and an influencer internally, but if they're not the ones that can actually spend the money, then you really need to be talking to the person that is.
Oh, absolutely. It's and usually that person isn't technical at all,
Yeah.
right? So your sales guys will bring you in or Matt
Mhm.
in or somebody, right, to have to continue on that conversation. Um, do you face it a lot in your area then? I know, like you said, we're geographically, what, 45 minutes apart from each other.
Yep.
I mean, it's not that far, but do you have a lot of people that just in your area that don't see the need to spend anything on technology?
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say that I accept that less than 25% of the market down here is willing to spend at the level that we're going to require them to,
mhm,
and we just accept that and move on. Right? I can't convince everyone. It's going to take a movement. And we were kind of bantering before this about how like the Best Buys and that of the world have kind of
mhm,
broken our industry, because people, they get a computer, and I run into it all the time. It's like, oh yeah, I have a server, it's over there, and it's like, it's the only box in the office running like Windows 10 Pro, right? And they're doing Samba file shares on it, right? There's no domain, there's nothing, and it's like, that's the server. It's the server running Windows 10,
yeah,
and they, when it's broken, they just go to Best Buy and they buy a new one, right? And so we've kind of put this thing in place here where uh, we have commoditized at least workstations and desktops to the point
mhm,
that they're disposable, right? We don't
right,
tend to try to fix them, and we don't care and feed them, right? So
right,
we treat them more like an appliance and less like an asset that requires maintenance, right? So like the analogy I gave you earlier is, we need to treat them more like cars, right? Like
right,
your car will last a lot longer if you take care of it, and
mhm,
occasionally change the oil, and your tires will
yeah,
last longer if you rotate them. The same thing's true on your computers, that we can get more life out of them, and you'll have an overall positive, better experience. Like, your
mhm,
car won't be breaking down 3 times a week on the way to work, right? That's a typically a better experience, but we don't treat it that way. And I largely blame the advertising and the fact that the costs have come down too, right? Because back in
yeah,
the day when it was mainframes, I watch a lot of vintage old 8-bit stuff on YouTube, and a lot of those old mainframes and that, they were very expensive, so people definitely took care of those. So the
mhm.
PC revolution kind of blew that out of the water, I guess.
It's interesting. It's interesting how we we take things for granted but there's other things that we'll put all this money into, like our car and
Mhm.
everything, to make sure it runs. Because what's that do? It gets us from point A to point B. What's a computer do? And I think it's trying to instill in the business owner's mind that that computer is getting you from point A to a point
Yeah.
B out somewhere, for so that you can continue to run your business. That
Yeah.
you look at cost center versus profit center in
Yeah.
a business, right? And everyone sees IT as a cost center.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a cost center. It's not sales, right? So it's not that profit side, but the loss of that becomes a, I don't know what's a bad word. What's a word for it? Your profit's going to go down
Yeah, it's the opportunity
tremendously.
cost or the productivity
Yeah.
cost. And I find from a conversation standpoint, that's actually a reasonably good a good way to approach that with the
Hmm.
non-technical user to get them to understand the value. It's like, let's walk through the cost of what a 3-day outage of your technology looks like. And,
Right.
I usually start with, how do you do payroll? Let's start there, right? Because most business owners, they start to get really squirrely when they
Hmm.
can't pay their people. Well, I use QuickBooks for that. Okay, well, you're not going to, so you have a ransomware attack, you're not going to have access to QuickBooks for 2 weeks. What are you going to do? Oh
Right.
crap, like blah, blah, like suddenly they're thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, how do you book your orders?
Yeah.
It's like, you very quickly, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'll just do email on my phone. No, that won't work either, right? Like, let's take that out of the picture, right? So
Yeah.
you can almost use like a small little tabletop, like not technical at all, right? It's like,
Hmm.
I'm just going to remove layers of technology until you understand that your business, while you think you can run it without technology, you can't run it at the level you're currently running it at.
Right. I like that you remove the layers, and you'll get to a pain point at some point with that client or prospective client. I I try to equate it to when I'm working with somebody, and I think you said it perfectly prior to this. You get it to a level where I'll understand it. I'm
Yep.
taking that away from you of picking on
It's
me,
fine.
because I'm picking on myself because of the technical part. But really understanding that there is a cost to not having this. And that client the other day realized that there would be a
Yeah.
cost if they lost their technology. Well, hey, I hope people got something out of this. I'm looking
Yeah.
at our 12-minute mark here. I hope people got something out of this. Jason is just he thinks both ways. That's why I like talking with him. He thinks both on the non-technical and technical side, so it's great to have those conversations with him.
Yep.
What do you want to say, Jason?
Nothing. I mean, this is what the last one we'll probably do before Christmas. So
You're right.
everyone should have a merry holiday, happy Christmas, whatever you happen to do, have a happy
Yeah.
one.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
So,
Absolutely. All
yep.
right, guys, take
I'll
care.
talk to you next week. See you.